Hey everybody, so today I am here to do a video in my exclusively pumping series here on my channel, and today we are going to be talking about how to regulate an oversupply. Now, this idea came from somebody who asked me a question in my last Q&A about regulating a supply, and I felt like they made a brilliant point. I felt like there's not really a whole lot of information on it. I feel like there's never really too much talk about oversupply because it does tend to be a sensitive subject. Now, before I get started, I am not a medical professional, and it is always best to seek out help from a local IBCLC. I will put a search engine down in the description box for you to find one that is local to you. They have a lot of tools and education. They're going to be able to help you on a personal level. You know, there's only so much you can get over the internet or stuff like that because not everybody is going to know all the facts about the situation. And like I said, they're just super thorough and able to help you one-on-one. Now, with that being said, this video is going to be all about oversupply. And oversupply is making more than your baby eats in a day. And I also want to say, first and foremost, I understand what you're going through, and I know that this is a tough time. I think a lot of people shy away from asking for help with this. I think a lot of people don't talk about it because it can be looked at, you know, not wanting a good thing, and that's absolutely not the case. Oversupply, while it is great in the sense of being able to provide what your baby needs, at the same time, it brings a lot of complications. It's not easy for most oversuppliers. They can run into bumps and hiccups along the way, and that's why I feel like it's even more important to be talking about this. So first and foremost, I just want to let you know that you're not alone, and I know I've personally been there, and I'm sure so have many other oversuppliers. Also, please keep in mind that everybody's body is going to react differently to different methods, and unfortunately, you're not going to know this until you try them. Now, oversuppliers tend to be the general exceptions to rules. You know, most people have to go 2 to 3 hours every single day pumping exactly on that schedule to make just what their baby needs. But with oversuppliers, they can go several hours in between pumps and still oversupply. Like I said, they tend to be the general exception to most pumping rules. So for most people, when it comes to having a bit of an oversupply, something that's a little uncomfortable for them, some cold compresses and time tends to take care of the problem in and of itself. But with oversuppliers and producing such a huge amount in short amount of time, it can get more complicated than that. And that's why I wanted to say, you know, be aware that everything is going to take a little trial and error, unfortunately. I also wanted to say, whatever you end up trying to do to manage and regulate your oversupply, please do it slowly. Even if you're not prone to clogs, an oversupply makes you prone to so many things. When you're making that much milk, you tend to be. Your body is very sensitive to the amount of milk you're making, and when you try to stop it or regulate it or manage it, sometimes there can be backfire if you don't do it slowly. So I encourage you to take it slow. Possibly even slower than what you think you need. A lot of the time I thought I needed a certain level of slow, but my body needed like literally snail's pace slow to manage it. And I also wanted to say, if you start doing something and you start getting more complications, whether it be chronic clogs, you start getting flu-like symptoms, you're having trouble emptying, any of that stuff, you need to reel it back. Not all the way, not indefinitely, but while you manage the things that have cropped up, the complications, you do need to reel it back. And those kind of things, if you're getting a whole bunch of clogs because you're trying to do one of these things I'm about to talk about and regulate your supply, it's your body's way of saying, this is too much for me to handle. So obviously there needs to be a modified version of what you're doing, and in the meantime, you do need to dial it back. I'm saying this all out of experience of myself. I struggled so much in the first few months with my oversupply, regulating it, getting a handle on it, understanding it, figuring out what my body needed from me, everything in between. There was a lot of people who had a lot of different advice for me, but honestly, it came down to just listening to my body and figuring out what it needed. And you're really the best person to do that. Now, working side by side with an IBCLC, they can even help you further. But I just feel like it's very important to understand that everybody's going to be different. Your body's going to react differently to different things. Just everything about this is so personal when it comes to breastfeeding. So don't expect for your journey to go one way, especially in trying to regulate an oversupply, especially if it's a massive oversupply. And they are a beast to tackle. So you need to also conserve some of that energy, because chances are it's not just going to take a few weeks to figure out. For most people with oversupply, it takes a couple months of figuring out a routine that's going to work for you to manage that oversupply. It's all about time and taking things slowly. I just want to keep repeating that because it was something that I tried for so long to ignore. I kept trying to push through and keep trying to do things my way when my body was trying to tell me differently. I thought it should be on this time frame. I wanted to be done. I wanted it to just be like this, when it wasn't realistic. It wasn't at all. Managing a massive oversupply takes massive patience and time. So the first step in trying to regulate your supply would be using some ice compresses in between pumps. I'm serious. Don't underestimate this if you are uncomfortable between pumps. Seriously, I just kind of felt like, I mean, they're just cold compresses. What could they do? They can do a lot. It can make you feel a world better just to have a couple of ice packs. If you're large chested, maybe get one for each side, for each breast, and really try to stay on top of it, because honestly, an ice compress in between my pumps was so relieving. So the next step would be to decrease the demand of your breast milk. And you can do this one of two ways. You can either decide to increase the time between pumps or decrease your pumping time so that you're not emptying completely. Now you need to do one or the other. Do not do both. Do not do both. And like I said, you need to do this slowly. Doing it too quickly can come back to bite you later. So if you want to increase time between pumps, I would start with 15-minute increments, meaning if you get done pumping at 1 p.m. and your next pump session is to be at 4 p.m. typically, push it to 4:15. Do that for one whole week. And if you don't have any issues, then go up another 15 minutes. And then so on and so forth. But if you see that stretching that 15 minutes brings on clogs or creates another complication, you need to take it a step back and you need to work on those clogs, and then you can slowly work up to that 15-minute increment. Like I said, slow and steady. And if you want to decrease the amount of time you're pumping, meaning you don't want to empty all the way, I would start with 5-minute increments. Now, if you're one of those ladies who can empty in like 7 minutes flat, you're going to want to do something even shorter than that. But I feel like for most people, 5 minutes is a good starting point. So if you pump for 30 minutes, only pump for 25. Again, do that for a week. If you have no problems after a week, then bump it up to maybe another 5 minutes. Doing this slowly allows your body to get a chance to understand the messages that you're signaling, but it also gives you a chance to watch out for signs coming. You know, if you do a lot of change really quickly, it's going to be hard to know what you've done to trigger the complications that you're now in. You're going to get sick of me saying it, but slow and steady. If you are under 12 weeks postpartum, most likely you're going to find that method is going to give you the results that you're looking for. And then once your supply either decreases to the amount that you're comfortable with, or you hit 4 hours in between pumps, because I wouldn't go much past that under 12 weeks postpartum, you can go ahead and stop those things. Now, I say you're going to most likely find that to be the most beneficial way to regulate your supply, because everybody's different. Your goal might not be to exclusively feed breast milk to your baby anymore. It might be to only pump so much in a day. I don't know what your personal goals are. I don't know what you're wanting out of this breastfeeding relationship, but for most people under that 12-week postpartum mark, that method is more than enough. Like I said, when you start going 4 hours in between pumps, or your supply decreases to the amount that you're comfortable with, that's when I would stop doing those things. You can go back to pumping until empty, and you can also just stick to the schedule that you have. Now, if you're past 12 weeks postpartum, you might find that this is a good start, but you might need a little bit something more, and that leads me into dropping pumps. Now, I have an entirely different video on dropping pumps, so I will link those for you because I'm pretty thorough in those as well. Again, with the dropping pumps, just like with this process, you'll want to take it slow. Being over 12 weeks postpartum does not make anything different than being under 12 weeks postpartum with needing to take it slow and taking things little by little. I was something like a year and a half into my journey when I started weaning, and I tried to do that very rapidly, and it came back to bite me a year and a half into it. So it doesn't matter if you are 2 weeks postpartum or you're 2 years postpartum. If you have a massive oversupply, doing it slowly is really key. And if you are over 12 weeks postpartum and you're finding that this method is like been a good start, but you're not quite getting the results that you need, you may need to turn to starting to cut pumps out of your day. And like I said, if you're in the process of either of those and you start getting complications, you do need to reel it back. Now, this doesn't mean indefinitely. This doesn't mean that all the hard work you've been doing is completely set back. It just means you need to figure out what your body's telling you. For me, when I started weaning, I thought I could just pump for relief. It's fine. I don't make that much in a day. I only pump twice a day anymore. It's gonna be fine. No, it's not fine. I needed to cut down to 1 pump per day, and then I slowly needed to chip away at that 1 pump, but I still had to make it a regular thing. I had to slow down. So reeling it back a little bit if you get into complications does not mean that you can't move forward with trying to regulate it, trying to cut down your supply. It doesn't mean those things at all. You can, you're just gonna have to pay attention to your body and try to make modified versions of what you've been trying to do so it can better accept it, it can get a better grasp on it, and hopefully not give you any complications moving forward. I do have videos on clogs and how to empty well, so I will link those as well because those are a couple of complications that you can run into. I don't have any videos on mastitis, but if you do start to experience flu-like symptoms, I would get a hold of your OB and your IBCLC ASAP. I know some people have a nonchalant attitude about mastitis. I do not. I don't play with that, so that is my recommendation. And lastly, I just wanted to say, I know that this is a super hard, complicated, frustrating process, and even though oversupply can be something that you don't feel necessarily comfortable talking about, that you're not alone. You know, like I said in the beginning of this video, it is a very sensitive subject. I feel like it makes people who oversupply feel like they can't talk about it as much, but it doesn't make it any less of a real problem for you. It doesn't make your struggles any less real because other people have different opinions on your situation. But at the end of the day, try to keep that in mind. It is your situation, it's very much real, and you're not alone. I'm speaking as somebody who used to oversupply. There will definitely be another side to this, a better side to this. It'll just take some time, some getting used to, trial and error, all things that you don't want to hear, I'm sure. But I did want to tell you to reach out and find support, whether it be messaging me on Instagram or if you need to find a Facebook group or something like that, just anywhere where you can talk to people who understand what you're going through. But if you have any general questions, make sure you guys leave them in the comments below. I'll do my best to answer them. Like I said, I will leave that search bar for you to find an IBCLC near you. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and as always, thanks for watching.